Jason.
I'm Stephen.
I'm Jace.
This is Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and today we're back out in the shop to work on Jace's Murray. Last episode, we fit an A20 Peerless into the rear end. This episode, we're gonna take it back out, we're gonna clean it, we're gonna lube it up, and we're gonna lock the differential. Also, we're gonna pull apart the front end and reinforce the steering. Stay tuned. Now that we've got the transmission out, the idea is to let Stefan and Jace take apart the transmission, and they're gonna clean all the internals. Meanwhile, I'm gonna be working on the steering. So in the past couple of days, I've been doing a lot of thinking, and I stopped by a metal supermarkets and I got some of this 1/2-inch steel rod, and I got a bunch of Heim joints, because the idea is to take the old tie rod and the drag link, which this is the drag link, and replace it with Heim joints and a new piece of rod. Now that I have this off, I'm starting to realize it's gonna be a little bit tough to duplicate this, especially because this is 5/8, and it's probably made out of a harder steel than this mild steel rod. I think this will be okay for the tie rod, but the drag link, I think needs to remain like this. So, I have also got coming in the mail, and it should be out there in the mailbox right now, I've got some 1/2-inch 20 dies to thread the end of this rod for these Heim joints. Now obviously I can't run the 1/2-inch 20 on this 5/8 drag link. So what I'm gonna attempt to do, is cut it off, cut these old worn out ball joints off the end of them. I'm gonna cut that off, I'm gonna mark it here, and very slowly and carefully, I'm going to try to symmetrically take that down to where it's 1/2-inch diameter with a flap disc and sandpaper and a combination of all that. Then I'll try to thread it, and I'll thread these Heim joints onto that. I'll get it on the tractor, I'll get it fit up, and once it's tight and bottomed out, I'll spot weld in a couple places to the Heim joint. That way it won't be able to rotate. I do have jam nuts for them, but I don't know if that's gonna be necessary. So that's my plan of action. And if this fails, if I mess this up, I can always make another one out of this 1/2-inch. And what I'll do is just do my best to duplicate the bends in this, and I'll reinforce where it's bent, one way or the other. Back over here at the tractor, one of the things that I'm gonna plan on doing is triangulating these linkages for the steering. Now these are welded to the spindles, so I'll take some sheet metal and some cardboard aided design, and I'll trace this area out right here, and I'll triangulate it up to here, and then up to here. And then we're gonna triangulate the steering spindles themselves. And also on the back side over here, I'm gonna replace this tie rod with 1/2-inch and Heim joints, and also triangulate these two, here and here. So that'll tighten up the whole steering setup, and without further commentary, let's do it.
It's a natural style. all the gear sets for the transmission taken apart across here, our next step is going to be to start pressure washing all of these.
I'm working on this drag link, and as I said before, the body of it is 5/8, and so I measured back as far as I thought I would need to thread it into the heim joint and have a jam nut. And I've been working it on this belt sander, and obviously it's not going to be perfect, it's not going to be perfectly round, but it's close. And I've got a 1/2 inch. And it's pretty much a 1/2 inch, it's 31/64 down there at the base, but it's 1/2 inch everywhere else. I think that's good enough to be able to try to run a die over it and thread it to 1/2 inch 20. All right, check it out. So there's my jam nut, there's my hymen joint, and it's looking pretty good actually. So we're gonna take this over to the belt sander and get that one down to size.
Dad, why are you putting on those big gloves, Dad?
Welcome to Redneck's Machine Shop, where we lay things down by hand and by eye. Check that out right there. 1/2. 1/2 all the way around. Oh, 33/64, so I bumped it. Still 1/2. All right, let's get her threaded in. All right, now that the drag link's done, I went ahead and I ran my 1/2 inch drill bit through the steering arm right there. And now I gotta do where the drag link hooks up on the spindle. We're gonna put a 1/2 inch bolt through that so that it can meet up with that heim joint. Check this out. Here's our new drag link. Now I put a nut in between the heim joint and the bottom of this here, because without the nut there, it won't be able to do its articulation. So anyway, this is our drag link, and it goes lock to lock. No problem. So the next thing we're gonna do is take out the tie rod, and we're gonna replace it with 1/2 inch bar and 1/2 inch 20 heim joints. This process should be a lot easier than the last one in that I don't have to shave down a rod to get it to where I can thread it. So I've got this here. This is 1/2 inch bar stock. I got this yesterday at metal supermarkets in Nashville. So that should be fairly simple. I'm gonna line the heim joints up with the end of the old tie rods, just like this, and just take a measurement in between. So it looks like a 16 1/4 inch piece of this 1/2 inch rod should do just perfect. All right guys, right there, I think we're pretty close. We're in the ballpark to being the same as it was before as far as width. So we're gonna get this fit back on the tractor. Start with the next thing. That is so much better already. All right, we're over here. I got a piece of cardboard and I'm gonna trace the shape of this steering rod arm. And I wanna see if I can strengthen it up. So if I do something like this, I cut that out of metal and I weld it to the side like that, that'll give it shape. And it'll give it a lot of rigidity. Cut out my piece that I just traced. I put it on this piece of steel, traced it with a marker. Now we're gonna cut it out. This is 3/16 plate. So this piece is gonna fit like this. I'll clean it up more, round that corner out, and we'll weld right along there. And then this actually goes in a little bit. So once we weld it this far, we'll tap this over to curve with that curvature, and then we'll finish welding it along there. All right guys, so that's how it's gonna sit, just like that. All right, here's our second piece. It's gonna fit in there just like that. And yeah, there's a little space right there that I kinda didn't get the perfect radius on that, but it's okay. I can fill that in with the old Hobart. So we got 2 down, 1 to go. We gotta do the one for the tie rod link right here. On this one, I think I'm gonna do a back-to-back gusset. So we'll catch it down here and we'll triangulate it like this. Now that I've got all my pieces cut and fit to reinforce these spindles, we're gonna pull this whole thing apart, and I gotta take the spindles out and over to the welding table so I can clean all the paint off, get them ready to weld. I figured while I was in here, I would reinforce the axle or the spindle itself, and we're gonna gusset it right there. And so I took a piece of this 1/2-inch bar stock that I had bought earlier, and I cut it, if you can see here, and I ground the edges down. It's red hot. I was heating it up with a torch. So it's gonna sit in there just like that. And that's gonna gusset our corner on the spindle. So I've got the welder set to 3/16 and not 1/2 inch, which that bar is 1/2 inch that I cut to fit in there. The spindle itself is 3/4. But if I turn that welder up to 1/2 inch with the wire speed, it's gonna be way too much material coming out way too fast. So I have it set to 3/16, which is plenty hot. And before I even started welding on this thing, I was heating it up with torches. So this thing right now is plenty hot, and I can see that it's good penetration. It's been a couple hours since we welded the spindles, but here's the finished product. As you can see, the gusset right there, nice and stout. All these gussets, this one here, this thing's ready to go. Here's the other one, same deal. So, the whole day, Stefan has been cleaning the transmission, the gears, and right now he cleaned out all the needle bearings that go on the end of the gear shafts. And right now he's re-greasing them with some red and tacky. So he's been working on that for literally the whole day. And we haven't filmed a whole lot of it, but just know that it's a lot of work. So over here is 1/2 of the transmission case, and what he's already cleaned and put back in is, well, the stuff's just sitting in there. It's not ready, it's not back in where it goes exactly, but that's that. The other half of it's over here. And Jay's cleaned out these halves. So he washed all this inside. We still need to grease that needle bearing in there, and we still need to clean this roller bearing. Hopefully we can pry out the little rubber seal, spray those balls out, and then re-grease those. And then also, I came up with a solution, a temporary permanent solution, because the bottom of these axle housing here, there's supposed to be a nylon bushing, and that one was there, but it was almost worn through, and the other side, this one was gone. But what I did was, these are the old spacers from this transmission when it had the 801. That was a spacer, and what I had done is I flared out the end so it can't go all the way up in. There's already one in here. So, and there's still a bushing at the top, and this bushing is actually still good, this nylon bushing. It's the bottom ones that take all the abuse. So now, with this up in there, it's a lot tighter. We don't have hardly any play. And we're gonna roll with that. I'll grease this good until I decide what I'm gonna do different. We might take this axle completely out of here and do a custom thing, but this is probably how it's gonna be for quite a while. So that's that. And then I took out what was left of the bushing on this side, and this is gonna go up in there. It's a tight fit, and I put a little bit of electrical tape on it just to really make it so it stays and it doesn't spin in there. But that's it. Now it's got a somewhat of a bushing on the bottom and one on the top. And this is this spindle here. That's how it goes. Just like that. And we don't have much play at all. I'll put a washer and a cotter pin up top, just how it was before. Anyways, it's about 8 o'clock at night, and we're gonna get back to this tomorrow because there's no way we're gonna finish it tonight. I still have to weld that differential up, and I'm gonna attempt to do something like the hole saw locker I did in my 2300. So with that, we'll see you guys tomorrow in the morning. What's up, everybody? It's the next morning. We got to work bright and early. It's about 6:30 a.m. And the first thing I came out here this morning and did was put the tires on. And with those bigger 19-inch tires we put on here, we've got clearance issues when it turns. It used to hit the floor pan right here. So what I did, it used to come out like this. I cut this section out and I cut around it, and then I took the existing border sheet metal, the piece that goes down like right here, cut some slots in it to take the bend out of it, and now I'm currently fitting it back over so I can weld it back and hopefully retain some of the rigidity and make it look so it's not so cut up. Come around the other side over here and you can see what it looked like before. It used to come out like this. This was this piece here. So if you see, when I turn the wheel, well, when it's up, it comes into full contact with it. But once that's gone, it'll be okay. And also, Stefan came back out and immediately jumped back on the transmission. He's getting that thing cleaned up and all reassembled, except for the differential, which we're gonna be welding up in a minute. All right, I need to cut it right there. So I just got done roughing this in. And let's see our clearance. I put the tire back on. That's at full lock, and that's with the axle all the way up. It shouldn't hit. It does hit it hits the, what's that called? The drag link. We're gonna have to put steering stops in this anyways so it stops like right about there. We'll weld something to the spindle that'll make it hit the axle so it can't steer too far. It needs that anyway because if it binds up and he keeps pushing, it'll just bend or twist something, or it's not good. So we'll make a steering stop, and otherwise we have all the clearance now we need. There's at least 3/4 of an inch there. So I'm gonna clean this up some more and then we'll do the other side. That's going to be it for the modifications to the footrests. I don't know why they just didn't have it like this from factory. I mean, Murray should have known people were going to put giant tires on them in 40 years. I think we're about done with the temporary permanent modifications. So this morning, another thing I did was I took out the heim joint that was here, and I happen to have these heavy duty ball joints, and it works a lot better with this because it has more flex than the heim joint did. Last night I was messing with this thing off camera, and when I steered it left and right, it would bind up, but now it's completely smooth, and it turns a lot further too than it could before. So we're gonna leave this one here. That's the only one that has an actual stud type joint, and the rest are heim joints. These two here don't even flex. They stay straight with each other. But, so here we go. We've got our reinforcement gussets, and then over here on the spindle, we've got our 1/2-inch gussets, gusseting that 90-degree bend in the spindle. We've got everything beefed up, heim joints like we were just talking about, and we've clearanced the foot pans for the tires so they can turn all the way. The next thing we're gonna do is put the tires back on and figure out the steering stops, because we need to know that the tire is not gonna hit this drag link or just turn too far and get bound up. Working on the steering stops, all I did was took some of that 1/2-inch bar stock. You can see it right there. I cut it off at an angle so that when it turns, it'll hit the axle. And all I did right now was I put it in there where it fits, and then I just put a fat spot weld on that, a tack weld. We're gonna do the other side, then we're gonna take this thing apart, put it up on the bench, and those things will also be kind of structural too. It'll help those not to bend even more, because it's right there at the 90 on those arms off the spindles. Both steering stops are done. We're gonna put this up in its highest position to where it would be the most inclined to hit anything. We turn it all the way, and the steering stop makes contact with the axle right there. Nothing hits, nothing rubs, tire spins free. The other side's the same way. And you can see the steering stop right here. So the next thing we're gonna do is take this apart, and I'm gonna put a thicker weld on those steering stops, and then this thing's ready for paint, and then the transmission is next. It's been a couple hours later. We had to run to the store. I got some paint to match the Murray where we did the body work. I also got some gear oil and some jam nuts for that tie rod. So we got back, the transmission is all clean. Stefan has that thing reassembled except for the differential, which we are getting ready to weld right now. So this thing is very similar to the 2300 we just did last month. Only it's a little bit less room in here to work, but it's about the same thing. So what I'm gonna do is weld between the gear teeth. Just a little bit, not all the way to the end or nothing. I'm gonna weld between the gear teeth right across the entire side of each side. And I'm gonna do it intermittently so it doesn't get too hot in one space. Then I'm gonna take that 1/2-inch bar stock that we keep using, that I got at metal supermarkets, and I'm going to take it and heat it up with a torch, and we're going to bend it into an arc shape that's going to go in the same circumference or radius of that gear. So once there's weld on the in between all these gear teeth, we're going to put a piece of that rod right on top of it, and we're going to weld it to the axle gear, and it's going to basically be up against the spider gears. And we're going to do that on both sides. I did the hole saw locker the same way, only I don't feel like cutting up steel with a big hole saw this time, you know, when I can achieve the same results using a piece of 1/2 inch dowel. So let's get into it. All right, check this out. So I welded in between the gear teeth, nothing crazy. I didn't fill them in all the way to the end. And I just, on this one, it just so happens that it just one tooth from the spider gear sits on each side. And so I welded up right to the next gear tooth where it would interface. I'm gonna put that spider gear set back in here. And the next thing we're gonna do is bend and weld those pieces of 1/2 inch stock in there. That's this stuff. All right, just like that, that's what I'm looking for. So it's gonna weld to the gear right over top of that weld I already put on it. And then what that's gonna do is stop the gear teeth of the spiders from trying to push down on the weld I put between the axle gears. And it's not going to expand on the carrier, like push out on the bolts by trying to ride up over that. This is going to prevent that. This is going to turn it into a torsional force, and I think it's going to be wonderful, just like mine. All right, I got 1/2 of this done. I'm going to leave it like this. So check that out. You can see in here, there's the one of those 1/2 inch dowels, and there's the other. It's welded on the front and on the back side to the gears. And this thing, it's pretty solid. Now this thing has no chance of rotating. It's just going to push basically on itself, and it can't do anything. This thing is 100% locked up. Check this out. So that's what we're working with right there. And also it's the mirror image inside. You can see all that 1/2 inch dowel crammed in there, and it's fit right up to the teeth. And I welded between the teeth on these axle gears right up next to the spider gears, to the point that I actually had to take a little bit off of the spider gear teeth so that it would fit down on. But now it's a tight fit though. It's sandwiched on there. I can't see any light between the carrier sides. And it's not even bolted yet, but it has zero play. I can feel zero. So I'm gonna go with this as locked up. So far it's been good in my Peerless 2300. It's a similar setup. I kind of like this one a little bit better because there's more material. On my Peerless I used 3/8. This being 1/2 inch and sitting up on top of the I welded between all the teeth. That gave me a good base to weld these two. So we're gonna bolt this back together and get it back in the transmission. And come over here for a second. So this is what Stefan's done. He bolted he put the transmission all back together. All of these needle bearing sets have been cleaned out really well and repacked. He detail cleaned everything. So it's all ready to go. He even did the input gear. We took that apart, cleaned out the needle bearings, and the roller bearing assembly, we pulled off the rubber on one side of it. We did not take it out of the case. It's right here. I just pulled off that piece of rubber, that seal. We blew it out with the air compressor, got most of the old grease out, if not just about all of it, and then we repacked it with fresh red and tacky. So this thing's good to go. I guess we need to put a vent in this thing. We'll probably just unscrew this or pop this out, whatever this red thing is, probably threaded, and see what thread's in there in its place, and that'll be our vent, so we don't have to drill anything. We'll investigate that in a minute, but for now, we're gonna bolt the carrier back together. All right, it's all bolted back together, and I can detect absolutely zero play. That is like just a chunk of steel now. Boat anchor. All right, let's get it back in the transmission. The transmission is all back together. Check this out. Everything is completely cleaned, re-greased. Even these outer bearings are re-greased. The housings still have a little bit of pitting from where they were rusting before, but that's all good. They spin nice and free. And the top just sits down nice with no fight. Nothing's holding it up. So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna RTV this thing back shut. And I think we're gonna go ahead and use axle grease too, not the bentonite stuff I have on the shelf. We're gonna use gear oil and Lucas like we've been using. Hopefully it doesn't leak too bad out of any of the sides here, which if it does, it does. So let's get to it. All right, here we go. RTV's all done, it's still wet. Instructions say to put it together immediately. Put it on one side. This is the Permatex Super Blue. I know you can't read it, I squeezed the crap out of it, but here we go. Oh. I'll get one shot at this, or else we'll be cleaning it back off and going back to the store for more of that stuff. That's it. I believe this is the part where we finger tighten material until it begins to squeeze out around the flanges. Let it dry for 1 hour, then tighten it all the way. So we're gonna get the bolts, finger tighten them like it says, wait an hour, tighten it up. All right, a little bit of randomness here. So I was talking to a bunch of dudes on the Facebook Messenger, and one of them happens to be Tom, AKA Creepy Crawler, and he saw a picture of this spindle, or this axle, where the spindle goes up through it, and he said that he's seen these split before. So there's 3 spot welds from the factory. I drilled 2 holes, so now it's gonna be a total of 5 welds. And what I'm doing here is I put a piece of aluminum bar so that I can plug weld this back shut, and it won't stick to the aluminum, but it should come out nice on the other side. See how she goes. Not bad. A little contamination because of the aluminum, but we'll just hit that with a wire brush quick and then we'll blast it from this side too. There we go, all the way down. Hopefully that holds together better. Steering is all put back together. We used regular cotter pins on this. It is a much tighter. It still has a little bit of slop, but we got bushings coming for that. So that'll clean the rest of that up. I plug welded it and welded down the seam right there. So that whole assembly is stronger. We've got everything torqued down with lock nuts. All this stuff is straight. Tie rod, drag linker in, castle nuts in with a cotter pin. The steering is ready to go. And then over here on the bench, we've got the 820. I just finished torquing all the bolts down, and we're gonna go ahead and throw a quart of 80 weight 90 Lucas gear oil in it. I put about 3/4 of this in there, and I'm gonna put about a quarter. This is not full, there's about that much in it, so maybe a third full. I'm gonna put some of this in here too. I like this stuff. It makes everything nice and thick. It's full of oil now, and I took out the red plug that used to be in here. Not sure where that went, but I'm gonna replace it with this barb fitting so we can put our vent back. All right, guys, we've got her all put back together. All we're missing is the wheels and tires, but I wanted to give a quick overview. So, starting from the back, you guys know the transmission's been locked up. That differential is tight as it could possibly get. We've got the vent, the hose clamp to it's tight. The vent is tie wrapped out of the way of the belt. It goes up and out the back. It's got a filter. We've got our brackets that we made last time painted. Everything's tight there. We've got lock washers on the actual bolts that hold it to the frame on the back here by the axle. What else we've got? And come up here to the front. We've got the steering. We've got our 1/2 inch tie rod. Everything's tight, everything's straight. We've got our 5/8 whittled down to 1/2 inch. We've got our, what's this called here? A tie rod stud, or a ball joint stud. Heim joint in the back. The only weak part left on this steering system that I can see is the actual steering arm that comes from the steering gear. This hangs out in space. It's not supported that well, but it looks like it's at least 5/8 of an inch thick, and it's gonna have to do for now. One other thing I'd like to mention is thanks to Mighty Rays, I really appreciate it. This stuck in my mind. So Mighty Rays said to take, or he wondered if the brake lever from the 801 would work on the 820. And sure enough, it did. This is from the 801. It's shaped different down here, so it lets it be at an angle like you see it now. It's back. So the stock, everything with the stock brake works with it. So that's really nice. We put everything back how it was, and it works better than it did before. When I had the one that was on here from the other tractor, it was kind of more forward, and I had to put the spring that pulls on it up here to this hole. Well, all that's gone, and it works like it should as it was when it was stock. So, that being said, this thing is buttoned up. We've got our clearance here. That came out nice. The paint almost matches. The paint almost matches here. This thing's looking stout. It is so much more rigid. This all was just loose and shook before, and now it's tight. This thing's gonna steer so much nicer for me. But with that, we're gonna get the tires on this thing. See you in a minute. Check out the steering. Plenty of room.
Turn it this way. Boom.
It's so much smoother. It feels so much more responsive and sturdy. All right.
Slow her down.
Man, this thing back on the ground reminds me of how cool it is. This thing is looking so tough. And now that we've got clearance and I know the steering's not gonna fall out from underneath it, I like this thing even more. Jace got a cool tractor and we're not done with it yet. And we're gonna try it out, but unfortunately it's dark outside and it's been a long day. So with that, we'll see you guys tomorrow in the morning. What's up, guys? It's the next day and we're gonna go ahead and try this thing out. All right, Jace just got done driving this thing around some of our obstacles out front here. I'm gonna let him go ahead and tell you what he thinks is coolest about it.
Well, it has big tires and a beefier transmission.
So what's your favorite thing about this tractor, Jace?
That it can go up stuff that it couldn't.
Yeah? Where were you just driving that you thought it was the coolest?
In the creek.
In the creek? And then up that super steep thing right there?
Yeah.
All right, what else do you like about it?
It has thicker steering.
Does the steering feel nicer now?
Yeah.
Way stronger?
Yeah.
And what else?
That it has a thicker transmission.
Does it feel stronger?
Yeah.
Really?
I can even feel the gears.
You can. Does the axle feel good and like it's locked up nice?
Yeah.
So what are you gonna do next? Maybe up the mountain trail? Maybe. Take it camping?
Yes.
All right, cool. Well, I guess that pretty much wraps it up. This thing's definitely cool. I'm kind of envious of it. I need one just like it. How about you?
Yeah.
I think we all need Murrays. Why do we have wheel horses and John Deeres when we got stuff like this? Anyway, that's gonna do it for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed the content. If you're new to the channel, please like, comment, subscribe. And once again, I'm Jason.
I'm Stefan.
I'm Jace.
This is Tennessee Mountain Homestead, and we'll see you on the next one.